Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled How HR Can Ensure New Parents Stay Engaged, Progress Their Careers and Achieve a Work-Life Balance. My name is Peter Banks and I'm the founder and MD of the HR Director. We are a strategic resource for senior HR and people leaders in print, person and online. Delighted today to partner with Bright Horizons, the largest provider of employer-sponsored childcare. So by way of a brief intro to the webinar, so when your employees start or grow a family, it's a big event in family life. It's also a moment that matters in the employee experience. Careers can be derailed if a new parent feels sidelined or unsupported before leave or on return. So experienced, talented people may look elsewhere if they feel their company's culture doesn't get it. So in this insightful webinar, we will explore how helping expectant parents plan a well-managed handover, remain visible and influential key stakeholders, feel well prepared for return and help to manage their day-to-day life as a working parent will increase their confidence, well-being, focus and loyalty. So listen, let's get underway. So let's introduce our panel. So joining me today, first is Simone Reilly, who is the Senior Business Partner of People at Burges Salmon. So hi Simone, and thank you for taking part today.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
And also Jennifer Liston-Smith, who is Head of Thought Leadership at our partner today, Bright Horizons. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Peter. Great to be here.
Brilliant. Right, let's find out a little bit more about you two if I can. So Simone, if you could tell us a little bit more about you, your role in your organisation, please.
Yeah, of course. So I would call myself an experienced people professional. I've worked in HR for just over 15 years and I've worked at Burges Salmon for the last 12. I think my role involves me thinking about the business's objectives and how we can support our people to deliver them. I work closely with senior leaders to make sure that we're getting the right people, we're retaining them and we're developing their skills and behaviours to get the best out of them. And then alongside this, I'm the Wellbeing lead, so I'm responsible for driving forward our Wellbeing action plan. In terms of Burges Salmon, it's a leading independent law firm. It's headquartered in Bristol and it has offices in Edinburgh and London. And we recently passed the 1,000 employee mark. Burges Salmon is an ambitious, sustainable and inclusive firm that ensures its clients, people and wider communities flourish. And everything we do at Burges Salmon is driven by our 6 core values. We believe that actions speak louder than words and our values should be evident in everything that we do. So as a consequence of this, I just wanted to quickly say that we've won the Platinum Investors and People accreditation a couple of years ago, which was great. And we also recently received the award for Best Law Firm to Work At for the 2nd year in a row from Roll on Friday. And in addition, and finally, responsible business is a fundamental part of who we are and how we operate. We act so that our people can feel proud and our stakeholders hold us in high regard.
Lovely, thanks Simone, and congratulations on that one. And also, Jennifer, could you tell us a bit more about you and your organisation, please?
Absolutely, Peter. But you know, fantastic working with organisations, with firms like Burges Salmon and you know all of your achievements, Simone. And it's very true. We know that you live and breathe those commitments to sustainability and inclusion and so on. So I'm Jennifer Liston-Smith. I'm Head of Thought Leadership with Bright Horizons, which means I do a lot of this kind of thing, sharing best practice and aiming to define best practice in the area of working parents and carers and how organisations can engage them and attract and retain that key talent group. Prior to this particular role, I built up from scratch and led the coaching and consultancy side of our business. I was one of the UK pioneers of what we then called maternity coaching back in the early 2000s, now called parent transition coaching in a more inclusive way. And Bright Horizons, Peter mentioned, being the largest employer-sponsored childcare provider, certainly that's true, workplace nurseries or near-site nurseries. We provide a lot of backup care, so care, you know, wraparound care, holiday cover, but also care when arrangements fall over. We have 1,400 clients globally, over 400 in the UK, so we work with all the leading employers. And in addition, you'll hear quite a bit today about the coaching and the online coaching services that we provide. So there's a whole raft of things that we provide also around elder care, even going into pet care now. So every element of combining work and family is covered by what we do.
Brilliant, thanks Jennifer. Pet care. Yeah, I knew that was coming. Okay, well, listen, let's kick off, everyone. Let's have a first poll. So this one is literally, the question is, do you currently have a program to support expectant new parents? So is it, answers are A, yes, provided internally; B, it's provided externally; no, but we're exploring it, thinking about it; or D, no, we don't see a need. So if you can have a little go at that one, and out of interest, so Jennifer, what do you think might be coming top here then from our poll?
Yes, good question, Peter. I'm hoping that it'll be one of the yeses, because I know for a lot of organisations this has become an area almost like a sort of hygiene factor it's expected now. And in terms of talent retention and the whole employee experience, people expect to have a supported transition that pays attention to their experience and believing in their future career as well as their work-life balance as parents. It may be that people are exploring it. Wouldn't be surprised to see that because you're here. But that would be my guess.
Okay. And Simone, I mean, obviously something you've looked at, but what do you think?
Yeah, the same really. I think like Jennifer, I'm assuming that people on the call are going to be interested in this. I suspect maybe there's more people thinking about providing something internally at the moment, with budgets maybe being a bit tighter, but using the external providers, the experts in the area, I think is really valuable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's look at our poll responses then. So you're both absolutely spot on. So 50% is basically no, but we're exploring it, thinking about it. 36% yes, provided internally. 11% externally, and 3% we don't see a need. So yeah, pretty much as we thought and would like, which is good. So we know we're all in the right place, which is good. So right, let's turn to our first question then, if I may. So and Simone, let me start with you, because I think what's quite interesting here is you're living and breathing some of these things that we're going to talk about today. So why did initially sort of you at Burges Salmon choose to focus on parental leave returners particularly? What were the drivers for this?
Yeah, so I think I'll firstly say that a driver for us was not retention. Retention's always been pretty good at Burges Salmon actually, but for us it was about helping ladies who have taken time out of the workplace return to work successfully. And by that I think I mean that they've returned confident and integrated into their teams and the client teams as well for the lawyers. I think working in a law firm is a really high pressured environment, whether you're a lawyer or one of the support functions such as HR or marketing, for example. And we find that most of the ladies that we employ actually take between 12 and 13 months of leave, which some organisations might find surprising, but they do tend to take the full year and then tag their holiday on to the end. So returning to the business, with a new baby or with child number 2 or number 3 is transitioning back to work can be really challenging. And we wanted to make sure that people felt as supported as possible in making that transition. Another key strategic kind of driver is that we want to have more female partners, and by that I mean within our senior leadership team. So we are a partnership structure, and we hope that providing ladies with this kind of support at such an important time in their lives will help them continue to progress their career to partnership if they wish.
No, okay. So and Jennifer, so to you really, obviously you're with your client hat on, I guess, and you're supporting a lot of employers. So what similar types of drivers you're seeing, or anything else that you're seeing driving this requirement?
Yeah, I mean, retention, Simone said that wasn't the particular need for Burges Salmon, but that's often a driver for many organisations. And what we've found working with organisations to benchmark retention rates before putting a program in place, and then as the program rolls out, we've seen a 12 to 14 percentage point rise in the retention rate, and that drives a cost saving, which is, Simone said earlier, this is a cost sensitive time for many organizations wanting to do the right thing and also wanting to be able to demonstrate ROI, return on investment. So if you think about the Office for National Statistics says the average return rate is 77%. If you had an organisation, let's say of 1,000, then you'd have about 4% taking, say, maternity leave, one of the forms of parental leave in a year. you would expect to have therefore about 40 people off on leave. You'd get about 30 back with that 3/4 return rate. If you can up that by, say, 13 percentage points to make it easy to 90%, then you're going to get about another 5 people back. And if we take the sort of, accepted rate of 30,000 to replace somebody, that's a modest look at £150,000 saving if those people are coming back who wouldn't have. And when we see programs, especially getting to maturity and people come, with their second child through the program, we see that the whole culture, they say to us that the whole culture has changed, that it becomes a place where being a working parent is the norm, and it's perfectly possible to have career-focused conversations and not have people make sidelining assumptions about what a parent is going to want. So I think it's that culture change and transformation and the underpinning ROI that we often see as drivers.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a change. I will say in any of these webinars, it's a time of change and transformation across everything that we've seen in the last 3-4 years. So some of these things I think have been accelerated because of that. But this is really good to see us on the agenda. Simone, so back to you then. So obviously you have these key drivers. You understood what you wanted to do. So, but what did you do next? Can you tell us about, for everyone watching, can you tell us about the elements of the program? How did you formulate that?
Yeah, I think we've got quite a few different elements to our program, some of which we've developed internally, and it's just about kind of encouraging conversations to take place, and some of it we did alongside Bright Horizons in terms of the work and family space that they provide, the parental leave toolkit, and also then the one-to-one parent transition coaching. So I think our people team are heavily involved when somebody says that they want to take family leave. A member of the team would meet with somebody on a one-to-one basis to discuss their initial thoughts in terms of time out of the office, potential start date, potential duration. Obviously, we don't kind of set anything in stone, but we'll carry out a risk assessment to check that the work that they're doing, if they're pregnant in particular, is is still safe. And then part of that conversation usually involves signposting them to the parental leave toolkit that Bright Horizons offer. We advise them to sign up and offer them the parent transition coaching as well. So we offer 4 one-to-one coaching sessions in total to ladies taking maternity leave, which is 1 prior to leave, 1 during leave, 1 shortly after returning. And then more recently, we've actually given them, this 4th session, which is kind of that 6 month after returning point. So I think that's when people feel like they've settled back in and actually it might be worth having a follow-up conversation. And we tend to find, so the coaching in particular has been really well received. We've received really positive feedback about the coaching. And to your earlier point, Jennifer, I think one of the I guess value added bits of feedback is actually that the person has felt really valued by their employer by being offered that coaching. So I think people really value that the culture is this supportive culture, and that it is allowing them to take that break, but then also supporting them with their return. So that's been really, really positive. And then other kind of practical examples, closer to the start date of their leave, we provide them with an internal handover checklist. We've developed that with people that have been on family leave, but that's something else that Bright Horizons kind of provide a template for. And we also talk to them about keeping in touch days, whether they want us to leave them alone for 4 months or 6 months, or however long, 8 months, 10 months, or whether they actually want to be kept in touch with for things. And we tend to find that lawyers will do the training as a kind of bare minimum, any training that is available whilst they're on leave. But many people just like to keep in touch with their teams generally. And then alongside that, we also engage with people's managers, so probably via the people team. I think we're going to come on to this in a bit, but I think people team engage with the manager alongside the person in some instances, and in other instances the manager's absolutely fully equipped to deal with this kind of conversation and this kind of support.
So lots of a great deal of two-way communication, it would seem, I think is obviously key, and you've got lots of tools there to kind of help. So Jennifer, what other options are open to employers to try in this area? What other things have you got in your kind of little box there?
Yeah, quite a bit actually, even on top of what Simone's described. So Simone's talked quite a bit about the one-to-one coaching. Group coaching is another route in organisations that have got a reasonably large population. A lot of that happens virtually, so it can be people across different regions, even geographically very different regions potentially, as long as the time zones work. And that's quite nice. Individual coaching really fits the individual's agenda. It's highly confidential, which is where an external expert is very helpful, as well as a really intelligent sounding board who's actually not part of the organisation. But group coaching can bring that sense of building a network, so that's another way of doing it. Keeping in touch days, Simone mentioned, or shared parental leave in touch days, split days, kit days. They can be used to provide a kind of firm-wide group coaching. So we've done with different organisations, we've done a whole range of different types of kit days. For example, a business update. So people come in, sometimes there's on-site childcare available on the day, or they can use their backup care scheme, so that covers them to come in and they get a business update. Sometimes we do it where they sit down with their manager just after they've had a morning session, which has equipped them for an influential conversation to shape their return. So they've got that kind of coaching. Sometimes we have a panel of recent returners sharing their kind of what's an old story of what I wish I'd known. That can be really powerful. So there are things like that that can be done on a keeping in touch day, bringing people together. There are also sometimes the option that people want to go for is to have a mentor or buddy scheme internally. And that can be really helpful. Not only does it provide really great pairing up of experience internally, but the people who act as mentors themselves find that it builds their confidence and their network. And we've provided often quite a kind of easy way in with co-creating some guidelines with the organisation and with the mentors very often, and then providing either in-person or online training modules on how do you manage that relationship, and just covering the what ifs. How do you deal with different things that might arise? So there's numerous ways of doing it, whether it's to provide people one-to-one support, online support, group-based support, and whether that support is coming externally from, for example, our team, or whether we are training internal capability to manage it. So there are lots of different angles. And it's worth mentioning on our website, there is what we call a program builder tool. And you can put in, there's a few questions that it'll ask about your aims for the program, and that will sort of diagnose what program will fit your organization and give you a report. So that's probably something worth trying out.
Right. I think this is this real time where so there's lots of touch points there, isn't there? I think what you're both saying is if the employee wants to be in touch, keeping them involved, keeping them kind of not left out of the mix is always really important. And I think we talked on it there, L&D, learning and development, is such an important part, I think, of everyone wants to still learn no matter what industry they're across. So I think that's another poignant one that you're kind of supporting as well. So, okay, listen, any questions while we're at this point? We've asked, we're into the webinar, but if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, please pop them on the Q&A and I will ask them to the panel for you. So just any burning questions, please do get them in for us. So let's run our second poll then. Another little one for you to have a go at. So this one will pop up on your screen in a moment. So if you support new parents, is that through online resources or people or both? So we're just trying to get a flavour of how you support them. So is it A, online resources? Is it B, people, coaches, mentors, that sort of thing? Is it C, both? Or is it D, neither of the above, no specific support sort of in place? So if you can have a go at that second poll. Simone, go on, I'll let you go first. What do you think is going to come out on top here?
I don't know, I suspect, I'm not very good, I sit on the fence, don't I? I suspect a lot of people teams are offering fantastic support, I would have thought. I think coaching is increasing in terms of its use, so it could be people. I'm not sure how many people would be using online resources. Yeah, I'm just going to sit on the fence.
Yeah, that's all right. Jennifer?
Well, I think I would also, like Simone, I would imagine that it's people, because that kind of came first. A lot of the coaching was in person, whether that's internal or external. Online resources have kind of followed. We've taken what we knew from coaching and put that expertise online. So I'm imagining it's people followed by online. But ideally, I'd love it if it was both, because I think there's a huge place for the both and.
Well, you're going to be very pleased then. You're going to be very pleased. So yeah, let's run the answers. So 45% is both actually, which is good. 17% is people, 10% online resources, and 28% neither of the above, no specific support. So yeah, I kind of think again, pretty much what you thought, and I guess that's a really nice combination. That both, I guess, Jennifer, what you'd say.
Absolutely, you know, and I think people do, we have such great tech, don't we, in our home lives these days. So as employers, we're always having to innovate and provide smart tech that's really accessible. People like to be able to access that in their own time, to, you know, have that kind of privacy in a way to you know, digest the learning that they want to digest. And you still probably want somebody to talk to every once in a while. So I think there's a real place for both.
We've got a question that's come in actually, so which is I'll share with you. So this one is, what is your advice in case of small companies in terms of support? So I guess we're talking small companies. I guess that could be anything to do with lack of budget or the smaller, you know, manpower, I guess, or people power. So Jennifer, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, you know, one-to-one coaching is a very easy way to start. You know, the way that works from our point of view is, you know, it can be an individual, it can be 3 individuals to kind of get things underway. Ideally, the individual and their manager would be a great start. So I would say that's a good way in. And you know, the other thing that you can do is potentially, you know, for example, if you're on a business park or something like that with other businesses, to join together with others and put a program in place that then gets people mixing, so they get a bit of a sort of cross-cultural view as well from other organizations.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And I guess you've got lots of tools, you've got lots of, but obviously there's a cost to those things, but it's just picking what's right for you and your size of organization. And Simone, I don't know if you'd have anything to add to that really.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a lot that people within the business can do to support each other. So if you've got somebody, I think Jennifer mentioned buddying, if you've got somebody that's been on family leave before, they're usually quite engaged with supporting other people, and whether that be in a kind of buddying mentoring relationship, or whether that's to provide them with a checklist that was helpful when they went on leave, or you know, a bit of encouragement, a bit of confidence to have a conversation with your manager. Some people struggle with that kind of initial conversation, I think. Yeah, my experience is that people are quite engaged. If they've been through the experience themselves, they're quite engaged in wanting to help other people.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Another question, let's move on to another question then. So hopefully we answered that one for you. So do you have any recommendations for increased online resources? So in this case, I'd like to improve the accessibility to support when you're not ready to discuss with an employer stroke HR, i.e. fertility planning, early pregnancy, that sort of thing. Who would like to? Jennifer, would you like to kick off with that one?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of slightly embarrassing risk of promoting our products. Simone mentioned earlier the work and family space, which is a bigger portal that covers the whole of the life stages associated with family life, right through to elder care, for example. And within that is the parental leave toolkit that addresses the parent transition for the individual and the manager. So back to the work and family space, where fertility might sit, because it's not quite the parental leave journey yet. There is, within the work and family space portal, we have a speak to an expert service, so people can book 30-minute conversations with an expert by just giving a little bit of a signpost on the type of topic they want to discuss. So, you know, if you've got any resources like that, it could be an employee assistance program potentially as well, if they're specialist enough in terms of the advice offered. I would say those kind of advice lines, and also on the work and family space portal, there's all sorts of blogs and sort of insight pieces that people can digest. And I think having access to expert advice on the one hand, and then having blogs and, you know, webinars potentially that people can consume that give you a sense of people who've been through it, like-minded individuals that you can relate to. And so it normalizes the concerns or the state of not knowing, you know, oh, it's okay to have all these questions and doubts. I think that's ideal if you can provide that kind of access.
Yeah, I guess this early stage here, I guess what we're talking about is they may not feel comfortable talking about it. So I guess that online resource where you can go and find out some factual information. Simone, I'm just interested if you've had any, such experiences, along these lines.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think, like I said at the beginning, we do have a very supportive culture, but sometimes there are definitely people that don't feel comfortable having those conversations. I was going to suggest if you've got a maternity policy or any of your family leave policies, whether you can include a bit at the beginning of that suggests how you might want to open that kind of conversation, or that advises that you speak to a member of the HR team, that you can have a confidential conversation with them, because I think people, even if they're not yet pregnant or not yet planning to take family leave, I do think people reach out and engage with those kind of policies when they're thinking about it. So it could be that you tag something on there, and I think, yeah, you can find the Bright Horizon resources are fantastic, but if you're not able to access them, you can find really helpful resources online, I think.
Can I just jump in? I think it's a really great point that Simone made there about kind of raising visibility of policies. So I know our clients engagement team, for example, work with organisations to do, roadshows. So there might be a benefits roadshow with all of the available things, or webinars online, just informing people and just making that available. So people may not want it now, but they may just remember that it's there when the time comes, or they may have a colleague that they can signpost it to, and making sure that managers are aware. So I would say anything that you can do, such as roadshows or webinars, to highlight policies and just make it so normal that these kind of things exist. That would be really helpful.
Yep, I get that. Good. Let's move on to our third question. Simone, let me come to you for this one. So we kind of looked at the why and the what's, and so tell me a little bit more about the impact. I'm interested in this impact it had on your employees and your organisation. When you've put this in place.
Yeah, so really helpfully, Bright Horizons carry out an annual survey for us on feedback from people that have participated in the programme. And really pleasingly, participants have reported a 51% increase in their confidence. Like I said at the beginning, we didn't necessarily have a retention issue. This was about equipping people with the tools to have kind of the conversations that are useful for their career development. So we're really pleased with that. Many people, this is the word that we see a lot, find the coaching invaluable. Many people have said that they couldn't manage their return without that kind of support, and everybody who has participated in the programme has recommended it to others. So that's really fantastic. We find that like a number of people at our organisation this was actually Jennifer's phrase, have lived out their parenting journey at Burges Salmon. So it's not just about having one child, but they have say multiple or 2 or 3 children, and sometimes the fee earning lawyers move away from the fee earning role as well and then step back when they're ready. And we're really supportive of that, and I think this has helped people understand that they can have this confidential open conversation with an external person to just discuss some of their thoughts on some of that. What's just really important to us is that we retain these talented people. So if they want to try a different role, we're supportive of that. And we have had people at Burges Salmon who have trained here to become solicitors. They've had their children here and they are now partners of the firm. So it's really good success stories. And we've got really good levels of female promotions, so some of which take place whilst people are on family leave. And in those cases, we would strongly recommend that people, these people in particular, use the parent transition coaching, because there's quite a few transitions going on there at the same time.
That's a really important point to make, isn't it? Female kind of promotions, and actually when we're trying to tackle that area quite majorly at the moment. Jennifer, and again, we know there's a cost issue here. We know there's a lot of challenges at the moment. So any other measures employers can use to sort of gauge that return on investment?
Yeah, so I've elaborated on that in some depth, but there are a couple of other things to say. So staying with that idea of the sort of gender equality targets that a lot of firms and organisations have now. I did notice in the Financial Times there was a great article just following the recent gender pay gap results, which are staying stubbornly close to around the 10% mark, aren't they? But I did notice in there a couple of our longest standing law firm clients were amongst those who had closed their gender pay gap, 1 to 0 and 1 substantially closed. And these are really large global law firms, compared with many where the gaps have got larger. So there is, it seems, a tangible impact, or at least a correlation between paying attention to the parent transition, and it stands to reason. You know, if you are, there's two ways that applies. If you are supporting female employees through this transition, then you're encouraging them, not only are you paying attention to their well-being and their work-life balance, but you're encouraging them to continue their career progression, which is how the gender pay gap comes in, because women don't get to the senior roles. But equally, by making programs accessible to parents of all genders, so that men are part of it as well, new dads in particular, you are making sure that family is seen as a shared enterprise, and that levels the playing field substantially, that it's no longer seen as a sort of women's preserve. So I think that's really important, and that's definitely a gauge. I would also say engagement scores, particularly organisations where there's demographic data that's looked at. So we're looking at where people are in a caring responsibility. So potentially, you know, segmenting the data by being a new parent, or, you know, parent of a child up to 5 or something. You can see that these people are often quite engaged because they've had the attention paid to them. So I would say that would be another measure. And just coming back to those impact scores that Simone mentioned, these are before to after uplifts. So 51% more confidence is genuinely, you know, the starting scores were this, and the after scores were that much more. And we do see huge impacts across areas that pertain not only to the individual's well-being, but to their leadership journey, and their ability to progress their careers. So it's really important, I would say, to be tracking that kind of thing, and it genuinely shows up as having you know, made a difference.
And I think just quickly on return on investment can mean many things. Obviously, it can be cost, you know, in terms of what you get back for what you've paid out, doesn't it? You know, in terms of putting these things in place, these tools in place, etc. But so Simone, just quickly, I'm just putting this slightly to you. So, but have you seen? Because obviously there's things with recruitment, the cost of recruitment. You know, there's some long-term costs, I guess, that you might have. Have you seen any changes and positive kind of you know, responses with that side?
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily directly, but I think this is another kind of string to our bow. We're operating in a really competitive market, candidate-wise and retention-wise. So, yeah, this is something that we are promoting, that we do. And I think Jennifer said right at the beginning, this is something that people are wanting. They now ask to see our family leave policies before they join, and this would be something that we would say is, you know, part of that program. So it's not just about the pay structure, but it is also about the support that you get. And I think there are a number of law firms where people don't take that amount of time off. I have spoken to, you know, colleagues in other law firms before who were surprised when I've suggested that a lot of our maternity leavers in particular take the full year. And I think that does kind of demonstrate that they feel like they can be absent from work for that amount of time and then be supported on their return, rather than having to kind of squeeze it into 6 months, you know, where they're kind of popping out and popping back in again.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, good. No, thank you. Jennifer, I know you've been influencing in this field, I think, for somewhat since about the 2000s. So what's changed? What's changed in terms of employers' approach over that time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you, Peter. I would say when we first started proposing to employers that paying attention to the parent transition was a good idea, because maternity leave at that point had become longer, and we saw an engagement issue and a loss of confidence that was quite hard to regain if people were just sort of out and then sort of hitting the sort of cliff to come back in. So that time, the question was, you know, why do we pay attention to this transition? And particularly as we got into the 2000s and we had the banking crisis, it was a question of, you know, some organisations, and this was quite telling actually, some organisations treated it as a nice to have and said, well, we can't be seen to be doing this now when we've got redundancies. And others who were more visionary said, well, we're going to need, in particular, we're going to need women in leadership. These were big banking organisations, for example, when all of this shakes out. So we better start or keep paying attention to things like this that are going to keep our talented people and keep people sort of equitably involved. So that was really different and sort of nuanced how organisations took that, and the ones that paid the attention to the longer term, you know, are still around and doing really well. So I would say what's changed now is most organisations now say, we know we need to do something. What can we do? What will fit our organisation? What will fit our budget? Everybody wants it to be inclusive now, which is great. People are saying this mustn't be just, you know, for one gender. It must be for everybody. It must be for all types of family structure, all types of leave. We often get involved in helping organisations look at their policies to make sure that they're really inclusive as well. And from very early on, when we were, for example, with a group coaching program, setting different group coaching sessions up, we always advise not to make a sort of mum's session and a dad's session. I mean, for one thing, it might be a woman taking the equivalent of paternity leave in a same-sex couple, so we have to really make sure that the wording is right. But also, why not call it a group that's taking long leave? Because it could be, you know, a guy who's adopting, for example, or it could be in a male-female couple. It could be the male member that's taking the longer leave out of shared parental leave. So we have to be very, very mindful of different genders, different family structures, and we can call it, if we're doing 2 different sessions, can be the people who are taking longer leave, because that is a different transition. You know, it's the becoming a parent and it's the going out from work and coming back in, that re-entry. If a person's taking shorter leave, often paternity leave, then they've got a really short turnaround, but they're right back into work when, you know, it's hard to sleep and they kind of don't know which way is up very often. And that's a group that would really like to talk to each other more and be more acknowledged. So I think now we're getting people definitely knowing they want to do something and trying to figure out what's best. They want to do it inclusively and they want to think about all the different groups impacted and how best to include all of them. So I would say those are some of the things that have changed.
Simone, would you say your firm's approach has changed in recent years? And I guess, you know, as the pandemic had a major impact on this, what's your take?
Yeah, yes, I would say, I mean, Jennifer's covered the inclusivity point, but we launched this thinking about women, like I said at the beginning, in terms of progression to partnership, but about supporting women because they were taking a long time out of the workplace. More recently, we've opened up our coaching to men who are taking paternity leave or shared parental leave, or, you know, any period of leave, but who have had children, and then, like Jennifer's just alluded to, you know, overnight they almost have to come back without any sleep, and there's definitely a bigger acknowledgement that that happens. I think the pandemic was really helpful in giving people insight into each other's lives. So a lot more conversations were taking place about people's children, childcare responsibilities, or pets, or other, you know, elder parents, or, you know, elder kind of relatives. Family became kind of just talked about because everybody was dealing with their own individual kind of COVID situation. So that's been really helpful at people feeling more comfortable having conversations about that, I think. I think the partners in our firm, like, well, I didn't say at the beginning actually, but, you know, predominantly a male group. The numbers are improving, but I think, yeah, men who didn't take any paternity leave, people have said to me before, my wife had the baby in the morning and I was back at work in the afternoon. Like, people accepting that that was bad and that this new situation is really good, and good for women and good for families. And you know, people, again, from COVID, working from home, people have had more involvement, is probably not quite the right word, but more involvement in the family life, and people enjoying that and wanting to support other people with that as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just quickly, a couple of questions come in actually, so let's try and deal with this one now. So you spoke earlier about sort of 4 1-to-1 at different stages before employees go on maternity leave. Has there been any good feedback for this? What are the exact stages? Is there one stage that has better feedback? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, good question. I think the session when people come back to work is probably the session that people value the most. I think before going on leave, people have a lot to think about, and most of what they're thinking about is their personal situation and, have I got enough clothes for this new baby, and a cot and all that kind of thing. So sometimes people don't engage with the programme at that stage, although most people do. And again, during leave, I think people are just busy and they're kind of like, I'll think about returning when I get to returning, but we're very flexible with when people can take those sessions. And if somebody doesn't take, say, the first or the second session, we do then allow them to take 4 sessions at a later date. People probably don't, they probably take 2 to 3. So they don't necessarily have to take them at the points that we recommend. And then, like I said earlier, we have offered now people this kind of 6-month follow-on session, and I think those that are properly engaged with the programme and have seen real benefit from it take up that. So that gets really positive feedback as well.
Yeah, great. Jennifer, anything to add on that one, or do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, great answer from Simone. I would say yes. You know, people have crossed a bridge by the time they come to that returners session, and there's such a shared understanding. But I would also say the initial session before people go off on leave is super important in terms of taking charge of one's own handover before leave, you know, and setting the intention that I'm coming back, particularly in a law firm. You know, I'm going to be on these clients again when I come back, is very different from how it might happen if we leave it unattended to, and it's just a sort of, you know, bye. So it's very much about putting people in the driving seat of their whole leave process. And in some organisations, for example, some of the consultancy organisations we work with, people are going to have to navigate during their leave process in the lead up to their return what work they're going to be doing, because they may be on the bench for a while, they may be, you know, reformulating a new project, which is quite normal, and they want to think about how they're going to do that, who their stakeholders are, who they're going to engage with, and how they'll stay influential while having the leave that they want to have. So I think there, you know, each stage is super important, but yes, there is that sense of shared community when people have the sort of post-leave session. All of our coaches, as well as being excellent leadership coaches, because this is a niche area of leadership coaching, so they're leadership coaches with great qualifications. They've got experience of working in similar organizations at a senior level, combining work and family, but also they've been there, they've got the t-shirt, they've been through the transitions that they're coaching. So they're parents if they're coaching parents, or they're carers if they're coaching carers, as we sometimes do, you know, elder care, for example. So I think that sort of shared sense of understanding really counts. And just coming back to a point Simone was making earlier about what's changed and what changed with the pandemic, I was just thinking as we were talking about that, one of the things that did change is it used to be that, you know, if a person's negotiated a different working arrangement after parental leave, they might be the one person who's dialing in to a meeting. You know, we used to have that sort of really invisible person who's working in a different way, and that was all regarded as perhaps a little bit less committed somehow, and wrongly, because people are often working extra hard to demonstrate their achievements. Now, because there's a lot of people working in different ways, there's more of a sort of democracy about different ways of working. So that was just something I wanted to add into that previous conversation as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And thank you for your questions, by the way. That's terrific. Simone, so what else needs to be put in place for good parent transition then? So, you know, obviously we're looking for ongoing success for new parents, and you know, of all genders. What else are you doing in that space?
Yeah, so I think engaging with managers is really important. I think they're they have a key role to play when somebody in their team goes on parental leave. So we've run a couple of we call it line manager training on this, which was actually done with Bright Horizons coaches. And I think people in the room found that really useful to hear some of the suggestions about how to have the conversations, but actually also to speak about their own experiences, either being on the side of taking the leave or now that they're managers and different experiences they've had with that. So I think management engagement is really key. We offer all of our people access to the work and family space that Jennifer spoke about earlier. We do it on an automatic enrolment basis, so everybody is enrolled when they join, and 30% of our people are actively engaged with that platform. Like Jennifer mentioned, it's relevant to everybody with any kind of family setup, so it's not just about those with children, but it probably is more useful to people that are on this parent transition journey. We promote webinars that Bright Horizons host. They're really useful topics, so we make sure that everybody is aware of those. And we also have had Bright Horizons come in to promote themselves and their services on our Wellbeing days, and also we've had specific sessions run by them in-house before. We promote the kind of snapshot emails, so we kind of in the HR team get information about who's reading what articles on the work and family space, and those that look like they're particularly popular we'll promote wider, so that even those that aren't accessing the portal can access them. And then also Jennifer's mentioned earlier the Speak to an Expert service, but that is something that gets really positive feedback from our people, and particularly again at that parent transition stage. I think a really common question is how to get my baby or toddler to sleep better, and we can just give them the phone number and they can speak to an expert, which I've actually done personally myself and got really useful advice. And it's that kind of thing I think that we think at the moment is even more important, because that kind of service you would usually have to pay for individually. So in kind of cost of living crisis, I think it's great that we've got that service which is free to our people. I just wanted to say one more thing, which was about men and taking shared parental leave. So when shared parental leave came in, we matched our shared parental leave pay policy with our maternity pay policy, and we've had a really good uptake, if that's the right word, of men taking shared parental leave, and that really has helped with, I think, just parents generally know who is a parent. I think sometimes men aren't necessarily aware that other men are parents because they've just been out of the office for the 2-week period, when they may have been on holiday. So having a man out of the office for a 2-month period, or some have taken 6 months, is really useful to just open up that conversation. And as a consequence of that, we've got more men working part-time as well. So just being really supportive in those conversations, supportive with flexible working requests, I think is another thing to make sure you're doing in terms of that parent transition bit.
Yeah, terrific, thank you. I remember when my children, who are now 20 and 17, and I got my daughter home for the first time, we were like, what do we do now? The support now that is being offered is fantastic. So Jennifer, what else have you seen other employees doing that's worked well on top of that for that parent transition?
Well, just taking the lead from what you just said there, Peter, about parenting goes on. There are so many life stages that we face as parents. I know myself. So one of the things that's been really popular, which was actually driven by our own clients, particularly given the concern parents had over educational catch-up following the pandemic, is virtual tutoring for clients' children, clients' employees, children and young people. So tutoring is now available up to GCSE level as a use of backup care. So I'll say a bit more about backup care in a moment, because that's another key piece. But the tutoring means that, a benefit that might be seen as for people with younger children suddenly becomes, again, the magic word, inclusive, because it's across different ages. And it allays those fears, because well over half of parents, we found, we run something called the Modern Families Index year on year since 2012, looking at the wants and needs of working families, as a sample across the UK. And well over half of parents are still concerned about educational catch-up, and they're also concerned about their children's mental health and their social skills and so on. So anything that employers can do to lean into that space is helping the employees to be fully present at work, psychologically as well as physically. But coming back to backup care as a whole, this is super helpful, particularly around the parent transition, because when you've got a new little one who might be settling into a nursery, for example, they can have, while their immune system is getting used to being in groups, they can be, they have little coughs and colds and things, and you need backup care on a certain day because your care arrangements haven't worked out as you would hope. And new parents can find that in particular, and it can feel really awkward. We're just trying to keep the whole show on the road, doing 2 jobs at once, it feels, as parent and employee, and then the care arrangements fall over. So backup care, a lot of employers provide, say, 10 to 15 days of subsidized care for their employees, and that could be across children, it could be virtual tutoring, it could be now pet care, it could be elder care, adult and elder care, but just to make sure that people don't run out of options. If it's a situation where somebody else, a qualified person, could look after that individual, that loved one, then they've got that to fall back on. So that works really well, not only around the parent transition, but across the life stages. So I would say, and workplace nurseries, I mean, they have a huge payback in terms of the well-being, the productivity, the career progression support that people feedback to say this is helping me with these particular matters. So we know that it makes a big difference if you've got the scope to have an on-site nursery, or you can partner with a community nursery. So if you don't have the investment to put a nursery or the space on site, you can actually underwrite places in a local nursery. We have partnerships with organisations, with clients doing that. So there's all sorts of different things you can do as an employer that help with the cost of living, that help with engagement, and help employees to feel, you know, either physically they're present because you've given them backup care, or emotionally they're more present because you've taken away the worries. So I think it's about looking across the whole of people's life stages and seeing where the employer can just make a difference. And the retention value is huge. People often say this is the best benefit, this is why I stay here. And we hear that both in surveys and research that we do, but also when we see people at roadshows and things like that.
Okay, we're running out a little bit of time, so about 9 minutes to go. I'll just warn you on my panelists here, so we're going to press on through. We've got another question, but I'm going to save that one back if you don't mind, but we will ask that in a moment. So let's quickly run our final poll. So this will pop up on your screen in a moment. So do your managers currently take a consistent and effective approach? Is it A, yes, we provide specific guidance and or training? B, yes, they are good at people management generally, but no specific support on this. C, no, they are somewhat inconsistent. Or D, not sure. So we'll quickly run through this one. And if you we'll just in the essence of time, I hope you two don't mind, we'll just whip through this and I'll just give the results. And I think we'll move on. Fairly clear already to me. So 37% is yes, they are good at people management. Well, it's actually split with 35% no, they are somewhat inconsistent. So there's a real mix match there. 20% yes, we provide specific guidance. 10% not sure. So if we just finish the poll and run the results now, we can just see what they were, and then we can move on. There you go. So there's the final poll. So yeah, interesting actually. I mean, very quickly, any comments on that? Jennifer, I'll come to you just if I may quickly.
Yeah, I mean, 50% of people were considering a program, so the managers are not necessarily getting already that kind of expert advice on having the right conversations. And we know that sometimes managers don't broach the conversation because they're worried about saying the wrong thing. And actually what we need, and Simone was hinting at this earlier, we need, you know, we often sort of just talk about better conversations as one of the goals of a program, and you know, that key conversation is between the team member and the manager.
So let's move on to our next question then. Simone, really, just for you, what about the role of the manager? And well, in your case, partners, I know, but this is a legal firm, but this could be across any industry. What's your advice for engaging them, and what do they need in their toolkit? There's a lot here, I guess, for them to take on board.
Yeah, I do think there's that general awareness piece. So I think if possible, holding some kind of specific instructor-led training sessions is useful. I think if you've got capacity within your HR team for HR to get involved, I think that kind of one-to-one in the background support of managers who you feel might not be as comfortable or as well equipped to have these conversations is really helpful. Even if it's just prodding that person to have conversations at certain stages. I think managers, partners in law firms in particular, but other managers as well, are always really busy. So sometimes it's not even about them being comfortable to have the conversation, it's just about lack of time. So I think although it's really important to get manager engagement, I actually think the HR team, the people team are really important in making that happen, and just kind of giving the prods or giving the information or the confidence in the background to make sure that the managers, you know what to say.
Okay, Jennifer, any examples of some people managers getting it right and getting it wrong? Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the parental leave toolkit, which people have access to in Burges Salmon and a lot of our clients, there are checklists. So if somebody is about to do a keeping in touch day, there's a checklist for the individual, there's a checklist for the manager, and it's a wonderful resource. It's date driven. So depending on, you know, their date of birth or adoption, their date of going out on leave, their date of returning from leave, the program kind of expands and contracts. So the manager and the individual are getting proactively fed with tools and checklists and insights at the right time. So if somebody is planning for a keeping in touch day, the manager getting it right this is an example of, can help them not only think about how to use that day in a worthwhile way, but, you know, who are the new faces in the team that they need to meet? Who else, you know, who are their other stakeholders? Are there other parents they could meet up with, perhaps outside the team, and sort of have a bit of a kind of shared experience session. And when they're coming back, we talked about being busy. You know, one of the worst things is somebody turns up and there isn't a desk for them to sit at, or there are people that they just don't know, and it appears that the person covering their role is still there and still doing it, and nobody's talked about the handover. And you know, it's so easy to get that right, but it's also easy to get it badly wrong. And again, there are checklists in the parental leave toolkit to say, you know, so-and-so's coming back in a month, you know, have a think about this. And even if you're not there yourself, perhaps you're traveling, perhaps you're not around, think about nominating somebody, think about making a buddy available who can just bring them up to speed. So I think there are all sorts of things that you can quite easily get right, but also quite easily get wrong if we don't pay attention to them.
And I guess that point there, you're kind of walking into almost this, you know, this return from parental leave is what we're talking about now. And then, you know, what does best practice look like? And again, because it's all about retaining, engaging those with the wider family life as well, isn't it? It's not just about that. So as ongoing parents, and I guess carers, you know, we're talking about carers as well, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, there's manager sessions, there's coaching for individuals who are becoming carers. Very, very important, because often for a carer, keeping one's job, one's professional role is a really vital aspect of our identity as carers that we don't want to let go of. But in the thick of the crisis that we might find ourselves in, you know, somebody's had a fall or somebody's had a diagnosis, and it might just feel like we can't do it all. But having a skilled manager who's had some training in you know, having a conversation with a new carer, and having a coach potentially as a sounding board, just gives that opportunity to think things through. And are there some adjustments I could make now that keep it all going, rather than giving up the thing that was going to be really important, you know, to the individual in terms of their professional identity, and you know, perhaps leaving work, leaving the employer without that talent as well. So you're absolutely right, Peter. I think there's all sorts of transitions in life where this kind of support, a skilled manager, a coach, a sounding board, an internal network, make a huge difference.
Simone, not non-parents again, so obviously you what are you doing for carers? You know, have you focused on that group yet, or what support have you offered?
So we asked people, actually, those people that we know to be carers, and we did a survey to find out if there were any other people, and actually there wasn't appetite to kind of network them together. So we haven't focused on them as a group, but we do make sure that people know that they'll get the one-to-one support if they approach their manager or HR for support. It's a really interesting point, because we try and be as inclusive as we can be, but I think it's really difficult. Everybody is in the parenting journey is more similar for more people than the carer journey, I think. So I was just going to say, can I just add a couple of things to the getting it wrong? Our lawyers used to sit two in an office, and somebody came back from maternity leave to sit in an office on their own, and it was kind of a bit of an obvious faux pas. And then I think the flexible working conversation, so again on people's return, I think that's a really crucial point to whether you get something right or getting it wrong. And I think we've had a couple of examples where the I want to work part-time type conversation just hasn't gone very well, and sometimes it does end up in that person's resignation. So just a couple of tips.
Very, very timely that, Simone, because I'm just going to ask this last question that we've had in. So, and I'll come to you, Simone, firstly. When a parent returns, what are the key points they want to discuss? Do you find they look for flexibility or reassurance? They are as important as they were before becoming a parent.
In my experience, I think it's the practical arrangements. I think it's the people wanting to get childcare sorted. So we're Bristol based, as I said, and the childcare situation in Bristol is really difficult. There's much more demand than there is supply. So I think that's probably the most important thing that people want to think about immediately on return, or prior to, but then on return. I think the confidence bit and the yeah, can I still remember what it was I used to do, and can I still perform in a good way like I used to? That comes probably a little bit later, once the child's settled in, you know, in that new childcare setup and the actual day-to-day routine is established.
Okay. Jennifer, anything to add there, just on that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, great points from Simone. I would say that from the coaching side, what we often hear is people do want to say, you know, how am I going to keep my career on track, and how do I challenge the people that make assumptions that say, oh, well, you won't want to be on that project with the late meetings or the travel. Well, maybe I do, you know, and they may want to travel, but they are often dealing with that sort of confidence hump that we need to get over on return, and a sense of having to reprove one's worth, and therefore it can be quite tricky from that position to have those conversations. That's one of the things our coaches are often equipping people with, how to evidence how well you're doing a few weeks back, you know, if people aren't noticing. So that can be pretty important too. And I would say to managers, catch people doing well, you know, notice what people are achieving soon after their return, and feed it back to them in specific ways to build that confidence.
Brilliant. All right, listen, thank you. We're running out of time, so let's just we'll have to wrap it up. But listen, we hope we've provided you with some useful and interesting viewpoints today to enable you to explore how you can help new parents create a work-life balance. And let's face it, such an important, exciting and stressful time in their lives. It's clear to see the benefits. I think I've seen that clearly from having a parent provision in place. And you know, what impacts on their confidence, well-being, focus and loyalty, which in turn has got to improve engagement, retention and talent attraction for your organization. So listen, my thanks to my panel today, Simone and Jennifer, for your excellent insights and knowledge and experiences, and also to Bright Horizons for partnering with us. Thank you all for watching, taking part in the polls and your questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon on another webinar. So thank you, Simone, and thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye for now.
Bye for now.